Oh, it felt like Groundhog Day, didn't it? Another never-ending, nasal-gazing session in Parliament as a host of opposition MPs lined up to bash the Prime Minister over Partygate. Look, I mean, I was angry about Partygate for all of 5 minutes about 4 months ago. Of course, those at number 10 making the abhorrent and inhumane lockdown laws shouldn't have been breaking them. The rules were an ass, and there should now be an amnesty, I say, on all COVID fines. But I'm sorry, this is now nothing more than a highly politicised mainstream media and Labour Lib Dem SNP stitch-up to force a democratically elected and highly successful Prime Minister from office. Think of everything going on in the world. A European war, a once-in-a-lifetime generation cost of living crisis, the recovery from an unprecedented modern pandemic exacerbated by never-ending lockdowns, constant attacks on Britain's history, and the explosion of cancel culture. But opposition MPs, and a couple of Tories, it has to be said, will use Parliament to wage this phony war. To hell with the consequences to the country. To hell with the consequences for Ukraine, too. I mean, Putin, he would delight in a damaging and destabilising Tory leadership election contest involving half of the cabinet and dragging on for months. At some point, we've got to draw a line under this and accept Boris Johnson's apology as genuine. I certainly thought he was in the House this evening.
And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House. As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now.
Boris then moved on to talk about the important issues of Ukraine and energy independence.
And it is precisely because I know that so many people are angry and disappointed that I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people and to respond in the best traditions of our country to Putin's barbaric onslaught against Ukraine.
But when Keir Starmer responded, there was not one word of anything other than Partygate.
What a joke. Even now, as the latest mealy-mouthed apology stumbles out of one side of his mouth, a new set of deflections and distortions pour from the other. The public have made up their mind. They don't believe a word the Prime Minister says. This isn't some fixable glitch in the system. It's the whole point. He doesn't respect the sacrifice of the British public. He is a man without shame.
Keir Starmer doesn't care about what's best for this country. He cares about politics and nothing more. Boris was right to remind him he was previously a nodding dog for Jeremy Corbyn.
Looking past the member for Lichfield and the nodding dogs in the Cabinet, there are many decent, honourable members on the benches opposite.
And when he talks about nodding dogs, Mr. Speaker, I'd remind the House that there was a certain nodding dog who sat nodding in the previous Labour shadow cabinet, Mr. Speaker, that would happily have installed the honourable member for Islington North and made, I think, a disastrous mistake in the security of our country at a very difficult time. This government.
There are actually two key exchanges for me in the House today. These are exchanges you're not going to see on the BBC or ITV or Sky News because they don't fit the narrative. First, this from Peter Bone.
On Thursday, sir, following your announcement this morning, this House has got to decide whether to refer the Prime Minister to the Privileges Committee. There is only one issue. Did the Prime Minister deliberately mislead the House? Could I ask the Prime Minister, did you deliberately mislead the House at the dispatch box?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Key point. There was also this from Deputy Chair of the COVID Recovery Group, Steve Baker.
Is that justice leading into mercy relies on a very, very old-fashioned concept, and that is repentance. What assurance can he give us that nothing of this kind will ever happen again?
I'm heartily sorry, as I have said, and I wish it had not happened, and I wish that things had been totally different. What I have already done, as the House will know, is taken steps to change the way we do things in number 10. But that in itself is not enough. I accept full responsibility myself for my actions.
What more do you want? There's a man sincerely admitting fault but determined to move on. We especially must, given no one seems to give a damn that the Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon broke her own COVID rules at the weekend by frolicking at a hairdresser's unmasked. She was warned by the police without anyone seeming to give such hypocrisy a second thought. So tonight, let me be clear, I accept the Prime Minister's apology. A fixed penalty notice is the equivalent of a speeding fine. Perspective is required. He accepted a damn birthday cake from his colleagues in a working bubble. For the good of the country, we must now move on from Partygate.